Your services are no longer required, effective immediately. I stared at the SMS message on my phone, reading it 4 times before the words actually registered. 8 months of grinding work, the biggest tech acquisition deal in Phoenix Digital Solutions history, and they were letting me go via text message while I sat in the airport lounge, literally 24 hours before signing the final papers. My name is Xander Cross. I'm 38 years old, and until that SMS arrived at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, I was Senior Acquisitions Director at Phoenix Digital Solutions in Austin, Texas. The company specialized in enterprise software distribution, and for the past 8 months, I'd been architecting what would become their defining moment. A $75 million acquisition deal with Nordic Tech Innovations, a cutting-edge AI analytics firm based in Stockholm. This wasn't just any deal. This was the deal that would catapult Phoenix from a regional player to a major force in the enterprise software space. Every connection that made this possible came from my personal network, built over 12 years in the tech industry. Every negotiation session, every technical review, every late-night call with Stockholm, all of it had my fingerprints on it. I'd sacrificed everything for this deal, missed my son's Little League championship game, postponed my anniversary trip with my wife Lydia for the 3rd time, worked through weekends and holidays, living on coffee and determination, because I believed in what we were building. The SMS was from Donovan Sterling, my direct supervisor, and Phoenix's VP of Strategic Development. Donovan was the type of executive who wore expensive suits to mask his insecurity, the kind of guy who'd steal credit for your wins while throwing you under the bus for his failures. We'd had our differences, but I never thought he'd go this far. Sitting in Terminal B at Austin Bergstrom International Airport, waiting for my flight to Stockholm for tomorrow's final signing ceremony, I felt the weight of betrayal settle in. The Nordic deal was less than 18 hours from completion. I had the preliminary agreements in my briefcase, the wire transfer authorizations ready, and a hotel reservation in Stockholm for what was supposed to be the biggest professional moment of my career. What Donovan didn't know, what he'd never bothered to understand, was that he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. 5 years ago, I joined Phoenix Digital Solutions because they promised me something rare in the tech world: autonomy and unlimited growth potential. The company was pulling in about $340 million annually, but they were stuck in the regional market while giants like Salesforce and Microsoft dominated the enterprise space. That's where I came in. I'd spent 12 years climbing the ranks in enterprise software, building relationships across Silicon Valley, Austin, and international markets. Before Phoenix, I was at Tech Vault Industries, where I'd orchestrated 3 major acquisitions totaling over $180 million. When smaller companies needed someone who could unlock doors that had been sealed for decades, they called me. My personal life had taken hits along the way. My marriage to Lydia was solid but demanding. We'd been together 13 years, had a 9-year-old son named Kai who played competitive baseball, and lived in a beautiful home in Westlake Hills. The divorce rate in tech acquisitions is brutal. The pressure, the travel, the impossible deadlines. But Lydia understood the game. She knew that landing the right deal could set our family up for life. Phoenix had seemed like the perfect fit. CEO Amanda Chen had personally recruited me, promising full creative control over international expansion. The compensation package was aggressive: $280,000 base plus equity participation in any deals I closed. Most importantly, they'd agreed to let me structure certain partnerships through my existing consulting entity, Cross Strategic Partners, which I'd maintained for freelance work. The Nordic Tech deal had been my masterpiece. Bjorn Lindqvist, their founder and CTO, was someone I'd worked with 4 years earlier on a smaller integration project. When he reached out about expanding into the American market, I knew it was exactly what Phoenix needed. Nordic's AI analytics platform was revolutionary. They could process enterprise data at speeds that made current solutions look like dial-up internet. But I'd learned to protect myself in this industry. The preliminary agreement I'd structured with Nordic was technically a partnership between them and Cross Strategic Partners, with Phoenix as the implementation and support partner. It gave me control over the relationship while bringing substantial revenue to my employer. Donovan had signed off on the structure without reading the fine print. Now, sitting in this airport terminal, I realized that oversight was about to change everything. Donovan Sterling had been gunning for my position since the day I walked into Phoenix's Austin headquarters. He was old-school corporate, the type who believed in hierarchy, process, and controlling information flow. While I was building relationships and closing deals, he was building political alliances and positioning himself as indispensable to the executive team. The warning signs had been there for months. First, he started requiring approval for client entertainment expenses that had been pre-authorized. Then he began scheduling mandatory team meetings during my scheduled calls with Nordic, forcing me to reschedule critical negotiations. Last month, he'd tried to insert his assistant Monica into my client communications, ostensibly to improve workflow efficiency, but really to monitor my relationships. What made Donovan dangerous wasn't his ambition. Every VP has that. It was his fundamental misunderstanding of how enterprise software deals actually work. He thought it was about PowerPoint presentations and quarterly reports. He didn't understand that billion-dollar partnerships are built on trust, personal relationships, and delivering results when the pressure is highest. The Nordic deal had made him increasingly paranoid. As the numbers grew larger and CEO Amanda Chen started mentioning my work in board meetings, Donovan's attitude shifted from passive-aggressive to openly hostile. He'd started questioning my methodology, demanding detailed reports on conversations that had always been handled through informal channels. 2 weeks ago, I'd caught him on a call with Nordic's operations manager, trying to establish a direct relationship. When I confronted him, he claimed he was just doing due diligence and protecting Phoenix's interests. But I knew what he was really doing, trying to position himself as the primary contact so he could take credit for the deal's success. What Donovan failed to understand was that Nordic's loyalty wasn't to Phoenix Digital Solutions. It was to me personally. Bjorn had made that clear in multiple conversations. They were partnering with cross-strategic partners because of my track record and industry reputation. Phoenix was simply the most logical fulfillment partner for the American market. Now, as I sat staring at his SMS message, I realized Donovan thought he was making a power play. He believed that firing me would eliminate the competition and allow him to step in as the hero who saved the Nordic deal. Instead, he'd just severed Phoenix's connection to a $75 million opportunity. The reality hit me in waves as I sat in that airport terminal. 8 months of my life, gone. Hundreds of hours of relationship building, technical analysis, and legal structuring, all of it now meaningless to Phoenix Digital Solutions. The quarterly bonuses I'd been counting on to pay for Kai's private school tuition evaporated. The equity participation that was supposed to fund our family's financial security, worthless. I called Lydia first. She was at Kai's baseball practice, sitting in the bleachers like every Tuesday afternoon, expecting me to text her from Stockholm tomorrow with news of our biggest professional victory. Xander, aren't you supposed to be on the plane? They fired me, I said. Text message, 30 minutes before boarding. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, what do you mean fired? The deal closes tomorrow. Donovan pulled the trigger, said my services are no longer required, effective immediately. Can they do that? I mean, legally, can they just... They can do whatever they want, Lydia. This is Texas. At-will employment. I could hear the crowd cheering in the background as someone's kid got a hit. Normal life continuing while mine imploded. What does this mean for us? Financially, I mean. That was the question I'd been avoiding. Without the Nordic deal commission, we were looking at maybe 3 months of savings. The mortgage on our Westlake Hills house, Kai's school tuition, the car payments, all of it suddenly felt crushing. I don't know yet, I admitted. I need to figure out what happens to the Nordic deal. Can't you just find another company to work with? Use your connections? It's not that simple. The deal executes tomorrow morning. There's no time to restructure everything. After I hung up, I sat alone with the weight of what had just happened. This wasn't just about losing a job. This was about watching 8 months of work benefit the person who just stabbed me in the back. Donovan would probably take credit for the Nordic deal, position himself as the strategic genius who closed Phoenix's biggest acquisition. But as I stared at the boarding announcement for my Stockholm flight, a different thought began forming. What if there was another way? I pulled out my laptop and opened the Nordic Partnership Agreement, all 47 pages of legal documentation that I'd structured 6 months ago. As I read through the contract language, something I'd almost forgotten came rushing back. The primary partnership wasn't between Nordic Tech Innovations and Phoenix Digital Solutions. It was between Nordic and Cross Strategic Partners, my consulting entity. Phoenix was listed as the primary implementation and support partner, but they weren't the contractual owner of the relationship. I'd structured it this way for protection, never imagining I'd actually need it. After my experience at Tech Vault, where I'd watched colleagues lose deals to corporate politics, I'd made sure to maintain some level of control over my key relationships. The legal language was crystal clear. Nordic's $75 million commitment was to cross-strategic partners, with Phoenix providing operational support. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through to the execution clauses. Tomorrow morning's signing ceremony would transfer $75 million to cross-strategic partners' escrow account, with automatic distribution to Phoenix based on the support agreement. But if Phoenix was no longer part of the equation, I called my lawyer, Rebecca Martinez, who'd helped me structure the original consulting entity. Xander, isn't tomorrow your big day in Stockholm? Rebecca, I need you to review the Nordic Partnership Agreement immediately. Phoenix just terminated my employment. They what? The day before the deal closes? Can you access the documents I sent you last month? I need to know exactly what my obligations are if Phoenix is no longer my employer. I heard typing on her end. Give me 10 minutes to review this. But Xander, from what I remember of the structure, this could be very interesting. While I waited for her call back, I did something I probably should have done months ago. I actually read every word of the partnership agreement I'd negotiated. By page 23, I was smiling. By page 31, I was laughing out loud. Nordic's contract was with me, not Phoenix, and Donovan had just cut me loose from any obligation to share the proceeds. Rebecca called back 15 minutes later. Xander, do you realize what you have here? Tell me. Phoenix has no legal claim to the Nordic deal. None. You structured this as an independent contractor relationship. They just fired their only connection to a $75 million partnership. The boarding announcement for Stockholm echoed through the terminal. My flight was leaving in 30 minutes. I could get on that plane as a fired employee, or I could get on it as an independent contractor about to close the biggest deal of my career. I stood up and headed toward the gate. The first call I made from my business class seat was to Bjorn Lindqvist in Stockholm. It was 11:30 p.m. his time, but Bjorn was notorious for working late. Xander, perfect timing. I was just reviewing tomorrow's agenda. Are you in the air? I'm on the plane, but there's been a development. Phoenix Digital Solutions terminated my employment today. Silence. Then, I see. And what does this mean for our partnership? This was the moment of truth. The partnership agreement stands exactly as written. Nordic's contract is with cross-strategic partners, not Phoenix. I'm still fully committed to executing tomorrow's agreement. Excellent. To be honest, Xander, we've had concerns about Phoenix's technical capabilities for months. Their support infrastructure is outdated compared to what we're used to in Europe. This was new information. What kind of concerns? Response times, system integration capabilities, customer support protocols. We've been hoping you might recommend a more suitable implementation partner. I thought about the conversations I'd had with other enterprise software companies over the past year. Have you considered Cloud Vault Systems? They handle implementation for several European companies entering the US market. We've heard excellent things about Cloud Vault. Would you be open to restructuring the implementation partnership? Absolutely. I'll reach out to them as soon as I land. After hanging up, I spent the 8-hour flight to Stockholm doing something I'd never had time for during my Phoenix employment. I researched every aspect of Nordic's business model, identified potential expansion opportunities, and drafted a comprehensive growth strategy that went far beyond the original $75 million deal. When I landed at Arlanda Airport, I had 5 messages from Donovan. Xander, we need to discuss the Nordic situation immediately. The board is asking questions about tomorrow's signing ceremony. This is about the Nordic deal. You can't just walk away from a $75 million contract. Call me immediately. This affects Phoenix's quarterly projections. If you don't respond within 2 hours, we're considering legal action. I deleted all 5 messages and called Cloud Vault Systems instead. Trevor Walsh, their VP of Strategic Partnerships, answered on the second ring. Xander Cross, I heard you were working on something big with Nordic Tech. Trevor, are you still interested in breaking into the European AI analytics market? Are you kidding? That's been our top priority for 2 years. I'm in Stockholm right now. Can you be here by tomorrow afternoon? For Nordic Tech? I'll be on the next flight. By the time I reached my hotel, I had Cloud Vault's implementation team mobilizing for an emergency partnership meeting, Nordic's legal team preparing to modify the support agreement, and my own lawyer reviewing the financial implications of cutting Phoenix completely out of the deal. Donovan had made this personal when it should have stayed business. Now it was time to show him what that mistake actually cost. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Stockholm time. Donovan calling from Austin where it was 11 p.m. the previous night. Xander, this is insane. You can't just steal Phoenix's client. I'm not stealing anything, Donovan. I'm fulfilling a contractual obligation to my client. Your client? That's Phoenix's client. You developed that relationship on company time. Actually, no. I brought Nordic to Phoenix, not the other way around. The contract documentation reflects that reality. I could hear papers shuffling on his end. I'm looking at the partnership agreement right now. Cross Strategic Partners is listed as the primary contractor. That's correct. This is some kind of setup. You planned this. I structured a legitimate business relationship that protected all parties. You chose to terminate that relationship. His voice went hard. You're stealing our deal, Xander. This is a $75 million contract that belongs to Phoenix Digital Solutions. Belonged, I corrected. Past tense. You fired me, remember? The line went dead. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was Amanda Chen, Phoenix's CEO. Xander, I need you in my office immediately. We have a situation. Amanda, I'm in Stockholm. The deal executes in 4 hours. That's exactly what we need to discuss. Donovan says you're planning to complete this deal independently. I'm planning to fulfill my contractual obligations to Nordic Tech Innovations. Whether that includes Phoenix depends on whether Phoenix wants to work with me. Work with you? You're an employee of Phoenix Digital Solutions. Was an employee? Donovan terminated me yesterday. Check your HR records. Silence. Then, Donovan didn't have authority to terminate senior staff without board approval. That's between you and Donovan. From my perspective, I received a termination notice and I'm acting accordingly. Xander, this is a $75 million deal. It represents 12% of our annual revenue. I'm aware of the numbers, Amanda. I built the deal. What do you want? That was the question I'd been waiting for. I want Donovan gone and I want equity participation in the international division, not revenue sharing, actual ownership. How much equity? 25% of international operations with full autonomy over client relationships. That's a significant stake. It's a significant deal, Amanda, and it won't be the last one if I'm properly incentivized. She was quiet for a long moment. I need to discuss this with the board. Can you delay the signing? The deal executes at 2 p.m. Stockholm time as scheduled. If Phoenix wants to be part of it, you have 3 hours to decide. After I hung up, I looked out at the Stockholm skyline and realized I wasn't nervous anymore. I was focused. At 11 a.m. Stockholm time, Trevor Walsh from Cloud Vault arrived at my hotel. We spent an hour reviewing Nordic's technical requirements and Cloud Vault's implementation capabilities. By noon, we were in Nordic's headquarters presenting a revised partnership structure that would provide better support than Phoenix ever could. Bjorn was impressed. This is exactly what we needed, Xander. Cloud Vault's European experience makes much more sense for our expansion plans. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda Chen. Board meeting in progress. Donovan's position under review. Need 2 more hours. I showed the message to Bjorn. My former employer is reconsidering their position. What would you prefer, Xander? Phoenix or Cloud Vault? The question came down to one simple factor: control. With Phoenix, I'd always be fighting Donovan's political games. With Cloud Vault, I'd be building something new. Cloud Vault, I said. Let's move forward with the revised partnership. At 1:30 p.m., 30 minutes before the scheduled signing, Amanda Chen called again. Xander, the board voted to terminate Donovan's employment. We're prepared to offer you Vice President of International Development, $400,000 base salary plus 20% equity in international operations. Amanda, I appreciate the offer, but I've already committed to a partnership with Cloud Vault. What can we do to change your mind? Nothing. This isn't personal, it's business. Phoenix had its chance to treat me with respect. Donovan chose a different path. Is there any possibility of future collaboration? Always. If Phoenix wants to partner on specific deals as equals, I'm open to those conversations. But I'll never be an employee again. At exactly 2 p.m. Stockholm time, I signed the partnership agreement between Nordic Tech Innovations and Cross Strategic Partners, with Cloud Vault Systems as the implementation partner. The system confirmed receipt and processing within minutes. $75 million transferred to my business escrow account. Trevor Walsh was grinning as we shook hands. Welcome to the big leagues, Xander. This is just the beginning. Bjorn nodded approvingly. Speaking of beginnings, we have another opportunity to discuss. When are you free to fly to Berlin next week? What kind of opportunity? $150 million expansion into the Asian markets. We need someone with your expertise to structure the partnerships. I looked at Trevor, who was practically vibrating with excitement. I'm very interested in hearing more about that. The flight home to Austin felt different than any business trip I'd ever taken. I wasn't returning as an employee. I was returning as an entrepreneur. Landing in Austin, I had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Most were from Phoenix employees who'd heard about the deal closure and Donovan's termination. A few were from competitors trying to recruit me, but the one that mattered was from Lydia. Dad closed the biggest deal in the history of Forever, and he owns his own company now. Kai had been telling his teammates that his father was starting a business. At 9 years old, he didn't understand the complexity of what had happened, but he grasped the essential truth. His dad had chosen independence over security. That evening, Lydia and I sat on our back deck overlooking Lake Austin, discussing what came next. So, Cloud Vault is handling all the implementation work? She asked. Everything. They have better infrastructure than Phoenix, more experience with European companies, and they're hungry to prove themselves in the AI analytics space. And the Berlin opportunity? If it's real, we're talking about building a portfolio worth over $200 million in partnerships. That's enough to establish cross-strategic partners as a legitimate player in the enterprise software space. Lydia was quiet for a moment, processing the implications. Are you sure about this? I mean, Phoenix was stable income, good benefits, predictable schedule. Stable until Donovan decided I was a threat. Benefits until they fired me by text message. Predictable until 8 months of work almost got stolen from me. She reached over and took my hand. So what's the plan? I'm flying to Berlin next week to meet with Nordic's expansion team. If the Asian market opportunity is real, I'll need to establish partnerships with implementation firms in Tokyo, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Within 6 months, cross-strategic partners could be managing enterprise software partnerships across 3 continents. And if it doesn't work out? I thought about that question seriously. The safe answer would be to find another corporate position, go back to building other people's dreams. But sitting there, watching the sunset over the lake, I realized I'd already made my choice the moment I got on that plane to Stockholm. It's going to work out, Lydia. For the first time in my career, I'm not working for someone else's vision. I'm building my own. My phone buzzed with a text message from Bjorn. Xander, Berlin meeting confirmed for next Tuesday. This Asian opportunity is bigger than we discussed. Are you ready for $300 million in partnerships? I showed the message to Lydia. She smiled. I guess that answers my question. The Berlin meeting exceeded every expectation I'd had. Nordic's expansion into Asian markets wasn't just about software distribution. They were positioning themselves to become the dominant AI analytics platform for enterprise clients across 6 countries. Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia, and Hong Kong. The numbers were staggering. $300 million in partnership agreements over 18 months, with cross-strategic partners earning commission on every deal closed. But more importantly, Nordic wanted me to structure similar partnerships with other European tech companies looking to expand globally. You've proven you can navigate complex international partnerships, Bjorn explained over dinner in Berlin. We'd like to recommend your services to our network. There are at least 12 companies in our ecosystem ready for American market expansion. Within a week of returning from Berlin, I had 3 more partnership opportunities in development. Tech Flow Industries from Amsterdam wanted to enter the American cybersecurity market. Data Bridge Solutions from Copenhagen was targeting financial services firms. Quantum Analytics from Munich needed distribution partnerships for their machine learning platforms. Each deal followed the same structure I'd perfected with Nordic. Partnerships with cross-strategic partners, implementation handled by specialized firms, revenue flowing directly to my company. No corporate politics, no stealing credit, no termination by text message. The Austin business community took notice quickly. The Austin Business Journal ran a feature article. Local executive builds $300 million partnership portfolio after corporate firing. TechCrunch picked up the story. How one text message created a multi-million-dollar consulting empire. But the call that surprised me most came from an unexpected source. Rebecca Martinez, my lawyer. Xander, I just got off the phone with a reporter from Forbes. They want to do a feature story on your business model. Apparently, you're starting a trend. What kind of trend? Senior executives structuring independent contractor relationships to protect themselves from corporate politics. They're calling it the cross model. 3 months after Donovan's text message, Cross Strategic Partners had closed 4 deals worth $180 million, with another $400 million in partnerships under development. I'd hired 2 associates, leased office space in downtown Austin, and established relationships with implementation firms across 3 continents. The phone call I'd been expecting finally came on a Thursday afternoon. Donovan Sterling. Xander, we need to talk. I thought you were terminated. I was, but I still have questions about what happened. Such as, how long were you planning to leave Phoenix? I wasn't planning to leave Phoenix, Donovan. You fired me, remember? You set this whole thing up. The independent contractor structure, the backup partnerships, you were ready. He was right, but not in the way he thought. I was prepared for corporate politics to affect my work. I just never expected it to come in the form of a text message. The line was quiet for a long moment. Finally, do you know what this cost me? Your job, I assume. My career, my reputation. No one's going to hire me after losing a $75 million deal over a text message. I thought about all the 18-hour days I'd worked while Donovan positioned himself for credit, all the client relationships he'd tried to steal, all the meetings he'd scheduled to undermine my negotiations. Donovan, you made a choice when you sent that text message. The consequences belong to you. Is there anything I can do to fix this? Fix what? My situation, my reputation? I considered the question seriously. Donovan had taught me an important lesson about protecting myself in the corporate world. In a strange way, I owed him some gratitude. Learn to have difficult conversations in person instead of through text messages. And next time you want to fire someone, make sure you understand what they actually control. 6 months after that text message in the Austin airport, I was sitting in Kai's baseball coach's office discussing his prospects for making the select team as a 10-year-old. His hitting had improved dramatically, and his confidence was through the roof. He's got natural talent, Coach Williams said. But more importantly, he's got that competitive drive. Just like his old man, I imagine. I smiled. He gets that from his mother. After the meeting, Kai and I drove to our favorite burger place in Westlake Hills. It had become our tradition after his practices, just the 2 of us talking about baseball, school, and whatever else was on his mind. Dad, Mom said you made more money this year than ever before. Your mom's right, but money isn't the most important thing, Kai. What is? Control over your own life. The ability to make decisions based on your values instead of someone else's politics. He thought about that while working on his cheeseburger. Is that why you started your own company? I didn't plan to start my own company, buddy. Someone else made that decision for me. But once it happened, I realized I liked being in control of my own future. Will you ever work for someone else again? I considered the question. Cross-strategic partners now managed partnerships worth over $500 million, with deals in development across 4 continents. More importantly, I had complete autonomy over every client relationship, every strategic decision, every aspect of how I spent my professional time. Probably not. Once you've tasted independence, it's hard to go back. Good. I like that you're happier now. He was right. I was happier. The Asian expansion deals had closed ahead of schedule. The European partnerships were generating referrals to other companies. Forbes had featured me on their Entrepreneurs to Watch list. But none of that compared to being present for Kai's games, taking real vacations with Lydia and controlling my own schedule. My phone buzzed with a text message from Bjorn. Xander, we have a new opportunity. $500 million expansion into South American markets. When can we meet in Sao Paulo? I looked at my son, who was telling me about his plans for summer baseball camp, and smiled. Some text messages were worth answering immediately. Others could wait until after burgers and quality time with the people who mattered most. The irony wasn't lost on me. Donovan Sterling had fired me by text message, thinking he was eliminating competition for a $75 million deal. Instead, he'd launched me into a career managing over $500 million in international partnerships. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. You just have to be prepared to recognize the opportunity when it arrives disguised as a termination notice.